The apprentice. As happens in the education of infants, when their parents teach them the meanings of things, likewise it's necessary that a teacher teaches the purpose to the apprentice. That can be the biggest challenge for anyone who's just starting out. It's very difficult to conquer the resistance of the ego, since it entails abandoning your individuality and placing all your trust in the guide. The challenge is not in what you accept, but in what you can't accept. If someone is unable to find a guide, it doesn't mean in any sense the end of the road. They always have the option of continuing ahead on their own. It's an honor to take responsibility for our own acts, to take in our hands the reins of our destiny. It's possible to keep going without the necessity of someone spurring us on, but it's necessary to recognize that to achieve that requires a true act of willpower. Those who have already lost everything are free to attempt whatever they want. Just like birth, the awakening of the consciousness is also a solitary act. Once the energy reaches a certain threshold, power itself takes charge of putting the teacher in the way of the apprentice. That's the only way. Anything else is a forced act and doesn't work. When the apprentice becomes aware of his situation, he begins to plan a course of action. The first thing is to establish techniques for saving energy, which is achieved by cutting off all superfluous things, only keeping the strictly necessary things. He organizes his life in such a way that he prepares his immediate environment, such as home, school, and workplace, as a battlefield, creating his own exercises according to the available space, and carrying out specific acts that help him with the task of cleaning his connecting link with the spirit. When the apprentice enters the world of sorcery, he finds himself submerged in the task of saving energy and cleaning the island of the tonal. Those are monumental tasks, but the techniques of the warrior's path come to his rescue. So he learns how to stalk himself. That's achieved by being deliberate in thought, word, and action. It's only when one is able to strike a balance in his daily life that the road clears up. The basic energy that we have is not enough to carry out the work required in sorcery. So one has to look for more, as necessary, wherever he can find it. On many occasions, the search for supplementary energy can take unforeseen turns that are not always well suited to social demands. The apprentice is hardly aware of the stages that he passes through in his struggle to clean the bond with the spirit. The path to knowledge is for him an immense labyrinth in which he finds all sorts of traps that, if he's not able to avoid them, they can very well cut off his path and put an end to his search. If we compare, we'll see that in ordinary life, the scenario is very similar. One wakes up and sees that he's stuck in the ordinary world, lost amid an endless number of commitments and routines, to the point that he ends up defending beliefs or ideologies that are not even his own. It's a great victory to conquer the ego and become an apprentice. In the beginning, the apprentice makes an effort to make sense of what he's faced with. The only thing that he has is an impulse that he doesn't know how to explain, and that takes him in a certain direction. When he finally surpasses the limit of his doubts and assumes his role as a warrior, new possibilities open up. And when he's able to clean his bond with the spirit, everything becomes clear, and continuing his struggle becomes much easier. It is then that the true battle begins. When the warrior has finally established an intimate link with the spirit, the relationship that he has is something completely personal. The work of cleaning the bond with the spirit can be simple or very complicated, depending in great measure on the warrior's temperament. For some, it's as if it was nothing. All it takes is for them, typo, All it takes for them is the effort to stop the internal dialogue for a few minutes, while others have to sweat blood to reach it. For some, that goal can represent years of arduous work. Many die meditating, and even with this, they never achieve it. What can you do in those cases? For those, the only option is to live as warriors for the rest of their lives. In the beginning, the apprentice may need incentives, but after he gains some experience, he can perform big changes just by using the will. From that point on, the incentives are no longer necessary. What kind of incentives do you mean? I asked. All your amulets of power and dream catchers are incentives, he said. I felt threatened and changed the topic. Decision, action, reaction. Nothing is coincidental, even when it eludes our comprehension. Intent is in all that exists. To believe that any event happens by chance is equal to saying that we ourselves are a chance of the encounter between our father and our mother, and that among the millions of seeds, we, by chance, were able to reach the goal. Saying that reduces our purpose of being alive to nothing. Even though there are scientists who acknowledge that there is a purpose behind all that exists, others cling to the notion that everything is random, like a game of dice. Sorcerers have discovered that absolutely everything is connected. That includes every living or inanimate being that exists everywhere, from the galaxies, stars, and planets, down to the microscopic world, where everything is equally interconnected. They've discovered that by means of those luminous fibers, it's possible to carry out the most unusual forms of communication among beings of different levels of existence. Sorcerers perceive that even human behavior is affected according to the patterns of the energy lines that surround us. The sorcerers use those lines to discover secrets and to interfere in things, people, and events. Likewise, they use them to travel to unsuspected places within and beyond this world. When we make any type of decision, no matter whether it's conscious or unconscious, some of those fibers of light become agitated. That in turn generates vibrations that interfere with other alignments, making the result of any action unforeseeable. We risk our lives every time we make a decision because nobody knows which door death is behind, waiting for us. A warrior who humbly accepts his role in the theater of life knows that everything is a game. For that reason, he acts in a deliberate way, but with total detachment. Therefore, even when his acts seem to have been prepared in advance, they're truly on the spur of the moment. This is due to the warrior's fluidity. When sorcerers interfere in an event, they should take into account that the act can generate unexpected resonances in the energy fibers because they affect other fibers in the incommensurable spider's web, making the results unpredictable. Just as in the field of modern physics, one can only refer to such fortuitous results as uncertainty. Only the most impeccable warriors are able to move those lines without getting trapped in them. When we move one of those filaments, effects are generated. One can say that the sorcerer's task is to dominate the art of pulling on those energy fibers. Intent is the force of alignment that is behind everything that exists. When we make a decision or in some way exert our will, we can be sure that we're exercising intent because each decision resonates in the infinite. It's necessary to be conscious of the fact that any decision, even the simplest, such as deciding to go for a walk in the park or going to the supermarket can very well result in our death. Under this premise, there are no big or small decisions. It's perfectly possible that by this time tomorrow, they'll be burying you. The only option for the warrior or the common man alike is to be impeccable, because nobody knows when the moment in which death drags us away will come. One sole decision can radically change our lives, either for better or worse. Once we choose a course of action, an avalanche of reactions is unchained. And before we realize it, we're trapped in some situation. For some, it's easy to escape, but for others, it's almost impossible. Those situations are the course of events in which the drama of life unfolds. And behind everything, as a silent witness, is intent. Decisions are situations that we face every day. They appear before us and demand an answer. One knows in an intuitive way when one is about to make a bad decision. But our interests, such as ambition or fear, get in the way. And later, there's no turning back. On many occasions, one mistaken choice might not only deviate one from the path, but on occasion, it can cost us our very lives. Any decision can very well be our last. Without placing any importance on what he decides, for a warrior, the only option is to be impeccable. The most pernicious thing is when a person makes a bad decision and later lives with remorse, passing the rest of his or her life chained to a memory of sorrows that can't be avoided. In general, people decide in the heat of the moment, without calculating their possibilities, without thinking about the results of their acts. Similarly to when one foolishly signs legal documents without considering that one will have to live with the consequences. The smart way is to follow the technique of the cold head, meaning thinking through, calculating, and evaluating the results that a certain action can carry. Intent continually presents situations in which, like it or not, one has to respond. Even without being aware, one chooses. And once the decision has been made, the same mysterious forces act in consequence. And the process repeats again and again. This is the way we're tested, gain experience, and fulfill our purpose for being alive. For sorcerers, nothing is accidental. They see in each proposal a door that opens up and invites them to pass through it. Those are the doors of intent. It is therefore the responsibility of each one to choose individually which battles to enter into and which to avoid, since once you make the choice, you'll have to live with the consequences. If you have the capacity of discernment, you'll be able to evaluate the situation correctly and with complete indifference, to choose what helps you advance on your path, because once you have chosen, the Spirit will continue sending signs to guide you through the chosen path. When everything stops mattering, then you'll be able to choose your predilections freely, without making the pointer of the scale move to either side. Since everything is the same, nothing really matters. Saying that the radiations come from the universal consciousness are the emanations of the cosmic spider is only an artifice that we use to appease the intellect. The ancients saw that what exists out there is a conscious, enormous force that holds together the whole universe and is beyond any description. Modern scientists call that force gravity, but in fact, that's only the effect that we feel of this being that encompasses everything. The seers perceive it as an amorphous fabric of strands of light floating in a space that doesn't have beginning or end. The truth is that there's no way to refer to that. Things like individuality, time, and space are illusions created by the great spider to create a place for the cosmic dance, where the plot of life is played out. We're all part of the universal being. We're here to gain experience and to enhance our awareness of being. Since an awareness rich in experiences is the real objective, that's the true reason for our existence. It's not because we see the great entanglement of luminous fibers that we understand the plan of the spider that weaves the destiny of all beings. In fact, if we were able to look at things in a detached way, even just a little, we would be able to perceive the flow of events, and we would know beyond a shadow of a doubt that our parents didn't join by chance. Perhaps in this way, and only in this way, would we have due respect for the monumental price that our ancestors paid so that we could exist, because everything has a purpose in the great scheme of the cosmic spider. The word. It's interesting to notice how words have lost their power. In the past, one strand of a mustache was enough to confirm an agreement. Unfortunately, that special kind of honesty has been lost, and that's the reason for the shameful bureaucracy of having to sign papers to force the fulfillment of what has been said. It seems like a simple thing, but that's the reason why people are alienated so far from the spirit. Words are extraordinarily important for sorcerers because they're considered the keys of intent. They're magical. Set in the correct sequence, words can open any door. Once one's word has been given, a commitment is made, a personal or collective bid. This is how we commit our will to others, and in that way, it's possible to construct our world. Now, if for any reason somebody fails to uphold his word, he harms himself because acting in that way weakens his will and muddles his connecting link with the spirit. The danger of lies is that they predispose one to fail. Once you propose to do something, in some way you summon intent. And if for any reason you have second thoughts about your resolution, you weaken your bond with the spirit. By failing time and again to live up to your word, you get so far removed from the spirit that it ends up literally scaring it away, and the connection becomes almost impossible. Only living the strong life of the warriors allows the spirit to express itself through their actions. This is what I mean when I speak to you of cleaning your bond with intent. And what can I do about my past failures? Well, that's what I mean when I speak to you about retracing your steps to recover and to clean your energy. Only in this way is it possible to reconcile. People should be very cautious about what they say or what they decide, because every time we make a decision, it sets off a cascade of events that, if we're not prepared, it can very well mean our end. For that reason, sorcerers are very deliberate with their words and decisions. Once they've made a decision, they don't stop until they've fulfilled it in its totality. They don't leave anything unsettled or leave it to chance. For a warrior, failure is not an option. You must be very careful with what comes out of your mouth, because a carelessly blurted out word can create or destroy. It's like a fire that begins with a single spark, but can unleash forces as destructive as a forest fire. One bad word can poison and even lead to the grave. A great part of our personal importance comes from the mouth, by means of words loaded with arrogance and bad intention. The necessity to gain recognition, fruit of personal importance, that at bottom is only a disguise for self-pity, makes people vulnerable unnecessarily, many times even putting their own lives at risk. Sorcerers use intent to utter a word like one who throws a spear, using incantations in ways that can cure, honor a friend, or destroy an enemy. The way of the sorcerers is to wait for the opportune moment to let out what they have been storing, he said. And what if that moment doesn't come? Then they don't say anything. They simply follow the orders of the Spirit. It's necessary to take into account that sometimes a piece of information can cause more harm than benefit. What's the point in contaminated information that only makes you weaker? Thoughts of hate, violence, or low instincts are contrary to the path of the warrior that aspires to freedom. Words are of great importance for sorcerers because they know that these convey great power and great responsibility. For that reason, they avoid speaking rashly. Personal importance is what induces people to go through long, tiresome speeches, in which many times they lose control, with one topic leading to another, and they're not able to stop until they've forgotten what they were talking about in the first place. They're like mirrors that show the same image time and again, without end. There are compadritos who could be compared to a drum. They make a lot of noise, but are hollow inside. They speak only to speak, like a clown who speaks a lot, but doesn't say anything. It's very unpleasant. Those people who rudely interrupt one's speech, such as the ego that rushes in, and they lose out due to their bad upbringing. In conversations, there are pauses, moments of silence, the ideal time to make some comment. However, moderation dictates that we analyze and understand the topic that is being discussed before making some observation. If you don't have any outstanding thing to contribute, you better keep silent. Intent is manifested in everything. If you pay attention to what happens, you'll see that everything in your surroundings tells you something. The smile of a child, a look, the gesture of a hand. Always be attentive to the attitude more than the words. It says a lot if you observe it. The word doesn't just serve as a way of communication among people. It can also be used to contact the spirit. It's sad, but we've converted an excellent means of connection with the spirit into the nonsensical chattering of the mind. To a very real extent, words are magical because, as in poetry, what counts is not the words themselves, but the intention that is hidden among them. It's important to remember that intent doesn't react in a direct, but rather in an indirect way, which is to say that one should use subterfuges when trying to intend. The way that anyone gets connected with intent is a personal matter. However, there is an invariable pattern that is known and applies equally to everybody, and it's called the path of the warrior. That's because it consists of a series of challenges to be overcome. Among the challenges is the necessity to save energy, because if one walks on this path to knowledge, the first thing that should be done is to save energy, and at the same time, to combat personal importance and to live an impeccable life, because intent only arrives when the warrior is able to act impeccably, to do the recapitulation, to put their tonal in order, and all the rest. Those actions facilitate the process of connection. All the strategies of the path of the warrior are designed precisely to achieve that end. With the subtlety and creativity that some birds display when they look for a partner, the warrior also uses all available strategies to attract the attention of intent. Without sparing any effort, he uses all resources at his disposal. Maybe the spirit could be compared with a wild animal. It takes time to win its trust. One should go slowly and must know when to advance and when to retreat until the friendship is formed. It's a matter of trying to conquer the spirit in the same way that you flirt with a pretty girl, with expressions of affection, generosity, good humor, beauty, and grace. When you succeed in the same way, you offer your life to the spirit. Ways of summoning the spirit. Warriors are actively interested in developing means or techniques to reinforce the bond with the spirit. Even though there is no way of establishing a set of procedures, they've found that the most effective way to contact it is to go and look for it deliberately, to call it out loud, to make offerings, and mainly to have infinite patience. In the face of power, the warrior learns how, at the same time, to be strong and humble. Do you mean that we can speak with the spirit just as we do it with our fellow men? He responded, the spirit can listen to you if you speak to it. To speak with intent, a clear and audible voice may be the best way to summon it. It's possible to attract intent in many ways. You can declare that you're searching for it. In other words, you manifest your clear intention of contacting it. Somehow the invocation gets registered in the infinite. The spirit listens to it, and if it grants it, your aspiration becomes reality, whether for good or for bad. On some occasions, the spirit has other plans for us, and what was assumed to be a victory leads to a disaster, while a loss sometimes becomes an advantage, because if we view it objectively, all losses are in fact a kind of liberation. Intent is something that one adheres to when summoning it. In fact, everybody, in one way or another, is constantly moving intent. But people almost always do it in an unconscious way. While a sorcerer wonders, why not do it deliberately? How can you summon intent? As I said, it's very difficult to talk about some specific way of summoning, because what works for one warrior might be completely useless for another. That must be the reason why, among the followers of some saint or spiritual guide, no matter how much they repeat his steps, it's very rare to find any of them that has been able to get connected as their leader supposedly did. It's true that we all have a connection with the spirit. However, because of the vicissitudes of life, most people have a link that doesn't work. The proof of this is the enormous quantity of people who blindly look for others to guide them. This is the source of all religion. That happens because the glow and the noise of the ego don't allow them to see or to hear. The job, therefore, is to make an effort to clean the connecting link. For the warrior, there is no more important goal than reviving his connection, his connecting link with the spirit. The old sorcerers put their apprentices through veritable torture to present them to the spirit, Fortunately, the current sorcerers are gentler with their tactics. They avoid the nonsense rituals, and instead of that, they suggest that they use the movement of the eyes as a way to summon intent. But again, in the end, the best way to attract intent is the impeccability of the warrior's daily life. Sorcerers have found that the only trustworthy way to establish a link with intent is through acts of impeccability and abandonment. It's very true that the techniques can vary, but no matter what method is used to contact the spirit, it must be seasoned with impeccability and abandonment. There are those who unerringly try to get closer to intent through rituals and disciplines, but they also fail because what really counts is the practitioner's impeccability and not the ritual or the discipline itself. The only worthy obsession for the warrior is freedom. That's the reason why he makes an effort beyond his limits to act impeccably. When I told him that for me, the word obsession had a connotation of mental illness, he answered, "For the sorcerers, obsession means inflexible intent, a special state of mind in which all one's resources are focused on achieving the objective, and everything else becomes irrelevant. If you want, instead of obsession, you can call it implacable determination." When the warrior realizes the situation that he's in, the purpose of freedom becomes an obsession. When he achieves a certain grade of determination, he enters into a permanent state of boldness that remains with him for the rest of his life. People around him perceive it in the finality of his decisions. It's like an aura of strength wrapped around him. Another remarkable effect is a change in the shine of his eyes. When fighting for impeccability, warriors, in fact, are fighting to get closer to the spirit. When they attain impeccability, they can summon intent with just a movement. Sometimes a warrior reaches such a level of fluidity that for moments he ends up fusing with intent. Every time you have a desire, you're just a step away from summoning intent. Sorcerers have established a scale that is useful for measuring the warrior's advancement in his path toward intent. According to this, it begins with a momentary wish that doesn't carry bigger consequences. For example, wishing for ice cream. There is, however, another kind of wish that implies wanting with enough force to lead the person to action. It's good not to confuse the tantrum of an impertinent child with the desires of a powerful man who exercises his will and doesn't hesitate when acting. For him, all his thoughts, resources, and actions are focused on his goal, and he doesn't allow anything or anyone to deviate him from his path. With his power of making decisions, the warrior always chooses what is strategically the most convenient way to carry out his work. The crossroads of intent are the multiple possibilities that present themselves in our lives, each one offering an entirely different existence from the other. They're like intersections of roads with their different destinations. They're like the cuts of a diamond, on which each facet reflects another reality. Sometimes a simple choice, such as turning to the left or to the right, can make the difference between life or death. We discussed talking with plants and our relationship with the natural world. He explained that it was not only about the plants or animals, but rather that it was our words that were heard by the spirit itself. For that reason, It's necessary to be good to all living beings. A warrior learns how to intend in diverse ways. The voice, the look, gestures, breathing. It's possible to summon the intent with a certain way of looking, or with a gesture of the hands, or an expression of the face, as if it were a mnemonic resource. It's possible to keep a complete experience in a certain deliberate posture of the body and revive it at will by the simple act of reproducing that posture. Through their convokers, the warriors send signals, and sometimes that immensity answers him. Warriors are aware that their effort to be impeccable is only a humble offering that they make to put themselves within the reach of power. They are like signs that one makes in the hopes that power will notice him. As strange as it sounds, the sorcerer, in fact, doesn't control anything. The one who determines is intent, and the only thing that the sorcerer can do is to comply. After a life of impeccability, it can happen that suddenly the spirit notices you. But if it doesn't notice you, no matter what you do, nothing happens. At that time, the task of contacting the spirit was for me, to say the least, an extremely abstract goal. I saw it as something very remote, practically out of my reach. But despite that, for years I fought to faithfully follow the indications of the path of the warrior to achieve the connection. Desperation led me to look for outside help when the answer was inside me all the time. I discovered the hard way that everyone should establish the link with intent by himself. Nobody can help anybody with this. The only thing one can do is to share stories of events that took place in the lives of others, in the hope that these magical stories will somehow loosen the bonds of reason. These are stories that help us to open up to other possibilities, as happened to Flor de Aurora, Flower of Dawn, an associate of mine who had been trying for a long time to get the attention of the intent. And so, one day, she went alone to the place of her predilection, a remote place among the mountains, and there she chose a flat stone on the edge of an abyss, and she offered herself to the spirit. She told us that her offering consisted of a kind of dance, of movement that she did with her long skirt, which she herself had embroidered to use specially for that occasion. She said that she prepared herself for the spirit, perhaps like a bride gets ready for her husband. According to her, the ceremony to stoke the spirit took hours. As she hadn't received an answer, she took off all her clothes and knelt down with tears in her eyes and asked the spirit to accept her. Suddenly, such a powerful gust of wind blew that she got frightened. Naked and with her clothes in her hands, she began to hurry back down the hill. But, blinded by a cloud of dust, she became disoriented and fell off the cliff. She thought that was her end. However, instead of dying in a broken heap at the bottom, the wind, in an act of love, sustained her in midair for several minutes before depositing her gently at the bottom of the ravine. She said that she remained there, lying down on the ground in a state of ecstasy. Her eyes shed tears, but she didn't cry from affliction or sadness. They were tears of happiness because she knew that she had been accepted by the spirit. Something similar happened to one of my comrades who similarly had already spent years sculpting his intention in the stones. He said that that was his way to polish himself, and that he did it in preparation for his encounter with the Spirit. According to him, he had already done everything he could without ever receiving an answer. On a certain occasion, however, he went to fly a very special kite that he himself had made. That was when the Spirit showed itself. It transported him and his kite a long distance from where he was. When he woke up, he knew at once that he had made the connection. However, the process of getting connected doesn't always entail such dramatic nuances. In fact, most of the time it happens very smoothly, as a whisper in the ear or a vision in a dream. But once the link is established, the warrior is never again the same. His past life is left behind forever, and no matter how hard he tries to return, he will no longer be able to. The requirements of intent. In one conversation, he said, "Each conscious being in the universe is connected to a line of energy. The act of exchanging lines is called aligning. Aligning allows us to experience perceptions different from the ordinary ones. Thus, it's possible to access to the whole content of the cosmic memory. Sensitive people that happen to have a fortuitous alignment may suddenly think that they were somebody else in another life. But what really happens is that they have hooked onto a different line of perception. The warrior doesn't feel any more or less important or special in any way. Therefore, he doesn't stay waiting for the Spirit to find and favor him, but rather he goes to search for it in a deliberate way. To do that, he prepares himself, cleans his life of unnecessary things, fulfills all the requirements of intent, and then stands right in the middle of the road, waiting to be noticed." "What are the requirements of intent?" I asked, and took note of his answer. "Above all else, when going to war, one needs the daring of a hunter who respects his prey because he knows that he himself is being targeted by something or someone else. So, in the end, both are on equal footing. The warrior enters the battle for the sake of the battle itself, aware that each battle may very well be his last. So he always gives the best of himself, and the result doesn't matter a bit. One can say that he acts with total indifference, which is what we call detachment. He accepts complete responsibility for his actions, is pragmatic, keeps his emotions under control, and never allows himself to indulge in sentimentality or hysterics for any reason. Even though he doesn't know what awaits him, he moves with such grace that shows complete self-assurance. A warrior doesn't let himself be deceived by appearances. He takes advantage of every opportunity that appears in his path and goes on with his work, taking care not to spoil his chances to find freedom. It's a requirement that he harmonizes his will with that of intent. He must be willing to do whatever is necessary to achieve his goal of freedom. And for that, it's necessary to transcend the desire for human accomplishments. Getting himself noticed has nothing to do with popularity or fame. Rather, it's an attempt to become accessible to power. The warrior isn't sparring in his efforts to achieve the connection. It's a matter of contacting the spirit with gestures, but not bodily gestures, although there are instances in which some dance movements have succeeded. They're gestures of detachment, gestures of happiness and generosity, giving without expecting anything in return. In fact, as I said, it's complicated to explain because what works for one is useless for another. But surely it's always possible to learn from other people's experiences. Intent is an impersonal force that only responds to the power of those who search for it. At the moment when one makes the connection, one knows without having to use words. When connecting with the source of everything, one becomes everything and nothing at the same time. The seers can see that some events leave marks in the luminosity of people, which are like scars that tell a story. That makes it easy for sorcerers to perceive things about people's lives. The marks of intent are events that have taken place in our lives, and that, in one way or another, have marked us. One can say that at some specific moment, something happened, and our lives changed forever. That something is the intervention of intent. The struggle of the warrior to be impeccable is nothing other than the fight to reflect intent. By flowing with the energy, an impeccable warrior can reflect the will of the spirit so well that each movement, decision, or action is a consequence of intent. One may have been born under favorable or adverse conditions to carry out the work. In the first case, the best thing is to take advantage of the situation to advance as far as one can in the path. For those who get the other option, there's no better remedy than to face adversity. The experience shows us that to adopt the path of the warrior is often like boarding a moving train. In the beginning, everything is extremely difficult. So that's when the fight is more intense and more interesting. It's also when many give up. To be successful, you need nerves of steel, lots of strategy, and exceptional bravery to conquer the obstacles that naturally present themselves in the path. And that's just the basics, like having food and shelter. Besides those things, one must confront the ambition to acquire possessions, the desire to form a family, and the tendency to lose track of the goal. It's very rare that the aspirant is perfectly coupled with the spirit without having to go through the purification process. Some are fortunate. They're born in a good home with a good family, while others are children of the street. Nevertheless, among both types, all that counts are the decisions that they make. So a homeless person can be a genius, and a millionaire an arrogant fool. In the face of death, the only thing that counts is how aware we are of ourselves and of our environment. That's what the warrior's work is about. In a meeting that we had with the aspirants, Don Melcher talked about the ones who are no longer among us. He said, "Now we can see that those who seem to be the strongest were the first to fall. Everybody is busy, caught up in business and family. Sorcerers say that only those who have already died from human existence are allowed into the world of the Nawal. That means that only those who have cut their chains with the world can really be capable of adopting freedom as a goal. How can you expect that a father of a family or a businessman full of commitments and responsibilities will have time for the spirit?" Many think that the stalking of the sorcerers is to deceive others, but in fact, it's designed to help the practitioner to become aware of himself. Only in this way is it possible to escape from the demands of the ego. Recapitulating is the way to get free from all garbage that you're carrying," he said in a reproachful tone to one of the apprentices. "You can't live with one foot here and the other one there. If you come here, don't bring with you the garbage that you made there. It's better if you solve your conflicts first and then come to see us." "I thought that maybe you could help me with my dilemma," said the one he had referred to, with a voice barely audible. "Your dilemma is a lack of energy," he answered gruffly. "Without that, you won't be able to make any decision. If you want to advance, you have to save energy. You already know what you have to do. So, why haven't you done it?" "I don't know how to get out of my situation. I can't just abandon everything as if it was nothing," he muttered. "Of course you can. What do you think would happen if you died tomorrow? Absolutely nothing?" he said, answering his own question. Then he continued in a cutting tone. "Everything will continue just the same, and it won't take long. Your wife will find another to replace you, and after a while, they'll forget you." The fellow was visibly affected. He seemed like someone who had been hit by a truck, but he kept on hammering, pitilessly. "Your family obstacle is only an excuse that exists exclusively in your mind. As I told you before, your real problem is a lack of energy. Do your work, recapitulate your life, and you'll see that it's not as complicated as you want it to seem." "That's my other problem," he said in a justifying tone. "I've tried to recapitulate, but I can't concentrate. It's very difficult and costs me a lot of effort. What can I do?" Don Melcher answered him in a severe manner. "The best thing for you is to start to cut out everything that's not necessary in your life. Then you'll start to get a feel for when it's the correct time to take each step. Start by making a list of all your activities and discard everything that is not crucial for your survival and well-being. Only in this way will you find time to keep going forward. Then make a list of your memories and start to examine them one by one until you've purified all aspects of each event. This is a 24-hour-a-day fight every day, and it's already difficult enough for those who are completely devoted to it. Imagine then how difficult it would be for a common man, entangled in daily matters. The prize is not for the strongest, not for the swiftest, but for those who persevere until the end." With an air of resignation, head down, the young man murmured, "Why so much work? If anyway we're all going to die." "Of course," he said, "but death won't be the same for everyone. Those who have managed to separate their energetic aspect from their personal history will be able to continue, maybe forever." Another aspirant told him, "I've already tried by all possible means to stop my thoughts, but it's very difficult. What else can I do?" "The only way to stop the internal dialogue is by intending it again and again. But you won't be able to until you conquer the ego. Only then is it possible to enter silence. To achieve it, you should become responsible for your own struggle. You should maintain your resolution to silence your mind for as long as necessary. You have to persist until you reach your goal. Silence is cumulative. It's possible to add it second by second until reaching the necessary quantity. After that, the silence takes control, and you literally enter a world of wonders, where divided perception is a daily fact. After you've attained a certain level of experience, it's possible to go in real time to other places on this earth, or to visit other worlds, or even to travel among the different layers of existence. The results that they seek are only possible when they achieve silence. So it's not for nothing that warriors covet this goal so much. We can affirm that all the previous effort is barely the preamble. It's only after they reach mental silence that the real work begins. Starting there, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities and explorations. One of those present asked him, "But Don Mencho, what can I do if there's no group of practitioners where I live?" "Very simple, mijo," he responded. "Do your practice by yourself alone. We're all fighting against the clock. The only thing waiting for us at the end of the road is death. Having understood this, any effort that you make is already something." Responding to another question, he said, "We don't have any choice. We're all conditioned to have an internal dialogue. But that doesn't mean we're forced to think about something in particular. So, if you have to maintain an internal dialogue, at least choose wisely the topic that you think about. Which means that instead of giving free rein to the thoughts or weakening yourself with ideas of self-pity, you should create strategies that allow you to focus your thoughts on investigating transcendental topics. Instead of giving in to distractions or filling your mind with negative orders, it would be better to choose to think about the concepts of the path of warriors so that it strengthens you. For warriors, the sense of opportunity is everything. That's the purpose that governs their whole life, polishing their link with the spirit.